Kevin. Excuse me if I have to clear my throat once or twice. I've been trying to get over a little summer cold, and it's windy. My name is Scott Dittman, as Kevin said. I am the CEO of FusionPharm. Our product line is called PharmPods. They are shipping container-based turnkey cultivation systems, primarily used by professional growers. As the subject of our discussion today is kind of around the technology, I'm going to take a little bit more of a macro approach and kind of use my time to kind of talk about the evolution that we've seen in the marketplace in general. We have been here in Colorado, we're Colorado-based. We've been here since the dawn of, actually officially government-issued cultivation permits. And in the 3.5 years or so that we've had to monitor the marketplace here in Colorado, we've seen, an enormous change in cannabis cultivation in general. If you'll indulge me for a second, we'll go back 3 years and talk about what it was like here in the summer and fall of 2010 when the government, for the first time in history, handed people licenses and said, hey, go forth and grow marijuana legally and do it out in the open. Back then, what everybody in Colorado did, myself included, I owned a couple of dispensaries at the time, we all hired a cannabis consultant, a cultivation consultant of some nature, rented a large warehouse, something about like this room, hung a bunch of lights from the ceiling, threw a bunch of plants on the floor, and kind of set our stopwatches for 90 days until we were going to start making a ton of money growing fields of cannabis. What we all learned really painfully in the fall of 2010 is that's not a very effective way for growing cannabis. What translates and what works well in your basement or works well in small scale just didn't translate into really large scale cultivation. All of us in Colorado lost crop after crop to spider bites and hermaphroditic plants and pollen and airborne problems and heat in the summertime and everything else. What we painfully as a marketplace learned for the first time in history is you just really can't effectively cultivate cannabis that way. So now what you find in this marketplace in general is lots of really big spaces turned into lots of really small spaces. So everybody kind of did the same thing. They came in and dropped their ceilings and put in a bunch of walls and took a 50,000 square foot building and made 20 grow rooms inside of their building. And that's still pretty much the model that we see today on varying scales. Whether it's something as small as what we do in PharmPods or something slightly larger, or 6,000 square foot room. Some version of that evolution has taken place pretty much for everybody. The evolution across the product lines, from some of the things like Mike and Matt do, to HVAC systems and lighting systems and programmable logic control systems. Everything has been marching and moving very rapidly. Back in the old days, and even still today, lighting tended to be just HPS and HID. And while I'd still argue that that's better than 90% of our lighting marketplace, you're finally starting to see inroads from technologies like LED and induction lighting and plasma and things like that. Our industry is going to be slow to move in that direction, and I think is being slow to move in that direction. But in good measure, what we do for a living as cannabis cultivators is produce a product that's sold based on weight, and it's extraordinarily valuable even at the 1 gram level. So it's difficult for a cannabis cultivator making an economic decision to make a broad change, like a lighting change, and not know, absolutely know, and have tested, effectively that this new product, whatever this new product may be, is as productive as the last product at the time, right? If you're talking about a 16 light grow room that's going to produce 20 pounds every 60 days in flower phase, it looks attractive to save $700–800 in electricity to switch to an advanced lighting product, but not if that advanced lighting product means you grow 2 ounces less cannabis, because now you lost money in that transaction. So it will be, has been, and I would argue continue to be a little slow moving in our space until real scientific data is available backing up some of the claims that are being made out there. And unfortunately, due to the nature of our product and our industry in the eyes of the federal government, real scientific data is very often difficult to come by. in addition to all the technological pieces that are changing so rapidly in our industry, I think, the more interesting change and maybe the more profound changes in cultivation techniques themselves. Our industry came from the closet, right? We came from being hidden, we came from being illegal, and as such, most of our technology and growing techniques were driven by mandatory sentencing limits and not wanting to have plants. So everything we did in cultivating cannabis was based on how you can get as much cannabis as possible out of one plant, or 2 plants, or 9 plants, or 99 plants, right? These days, that's not really the issue anymore, and the paradigm shift in how we're cultivating cannabis, I think, is bigger and is the bigger part of the story than some of the core technology. We're learning and understanding that cultivating many plants produces more cannabis over the same amount of time than cultivating fewer plants. In most states and most places where people have licenses to do this, Colorado being the main exception because we have plant count limits here, people aren't limited by how many plants they're allowed to have. So I think we're seeing a lot more people moving towards many small plants rather than many large plants. And that opens up an entire different avenue in how to cultivate this plant. Some of the things like super cropping and some of the many techniques people use in such abundance, I think, are going to start to be a little less used and a little less useful as you find that you need less of it more small plants, and you're more labor efficient not to be doing a great many of these labor intensive things that people traditionally do. I guess in summary, we're moving towards agriculture in what we do and away from boutique bonsai cannabis cultivation. And I think we'll see that change be the more fundamental driver than any of the individual technologies, although all of those have a big part of the story as well. So I'll give the rest of my time if we have questions.